Today, we're talking about the power of relationships when building a business. It's something that I think sometimes is overlooked because when you think of running an online business, you kind of think of yourself behind a computer. And a lot of times too, we think, oh, we'll just put up some like Facebook ads and we'll get a bunch of people on our email list and we'll grow a business. But really, one thing I can tell you, looking back over my 5 years of entrepreneurship, is relationships that I have built along the way have single-handedly been the biggest catalyst in getting me to the next level. And today, my guest is going to be talking to us all about that. Her name is Shannon Mattern, and she teaches non-techie DIYers how to build a website and get found online. And she teaches web designers how to create profitable, sustainable, scalable web design businesses. She's the host of Pep Talks for Side Hustlers, a podcast that shares side hustle success stories and advice to help listeners go from side hustle to self-employed without taking a pay cut. So let's jump right in and hear about Shannon's entrepreneurial journey. You are listening to the Empowered Business Podcast. I'm your host, Monica Froese, a mom of two and your secret weapon to creating a six-figure digital product business. I'm on a mission to help 1,000 women make $100,000 a year. That's right, $100 million towards financial independence for women. As an online business expert, I am teaching you everything I know right here week after week, so you can join us on the journey to $100 million. Sound good? Then let's jump in. Shannon, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So we have not talked for like 2 years, but it feels like it's been like 2 months, hasn't it?
I know. It's crazy.
Yeah, it really is. I was on your podcast at the end of 2019, so before COVID, and you were like, wait, was that before COVID or after COVID? Because it's like a blur, the last 18 months-ish of life. And so much has changed. So I'm really excited to catch up and hear about where your business is at now and what's going on. So I always like to start with your entrepreneurial journey. Why you're an entrepreneur, how it got started, and where you are today.
Yeah, so I think it was back in 2014, which seems like a lifetime ago now. I was just working my day job, hating my life, miserable. I mean, I really was just in a bad place just with my mindset. And I was sitting in my office one day and I was just like, I cannot do this for the rest of my life. I literally cannot do this Groundhog Day. I'm made for more. There's got to be something more out there for me. And I felt really guilty because I had an amazing job and full benefits paid. Like I was just like, I should like this. I should be happy. And I was not. Very just unfulfilled. And, we can talk about like toxic work environments, but really it was like, I had a bad attitude also. So I was not part of, that whole piece of it. So I remember thinking like, I love part of my job. I was in marketing and IT. Like I was in charge of all of our websites. And I was like, I think I could do this on the side and get paid for it. And so I mentioned something. I think what happened was one of our vendors called and said, hey, who built your website? We're looking for someone for WordPress and we wanted to know who you use. And I was like, oh, I did. He was like, do you do side work? And I'm like, yeah. So I got my first client.
How did you learn how to build websites?
It was really an on-the-job thing. I actually went to school for communications. I went to college, got a degree in communications. I had like one digital media design class, and this was like in 2002. So we were coding from scratch back in the day. So I had that like baseline. And I remember graduating from college in December of 2002, right after September 11th happened. There were literally like no jobs. I was making lattes at the airport, which was my job in college. And I was like, I'm going to go back to school for an associate's degree in digital media design so that I can like go get some kind of, job doing web stuff way back then. And then I ended up getting an internship at the law firm my sister worked at, and marketing department there. Had to start a blog for the lawyers at that law firm. And so that's when I kind of came onto WordPress and then got hooked because I was like, I can make this do anything I want. Like anything I desire, someone made a plugin for it. And it just like hooked me. So I started solving business problems for my companies with WordPress. So I get this new job. It's a nonprofit. I'm like, why don't you guys have online event registration? Why don't you guys have this? And I started building all of this stuff for them. And that's kind of really how that worked. But that wasn't my role. It was just the thing that they came to me to do. I had an executive role that had really nothing to do with that stuff. But nonprofit, you wear a lot of hats. So yeah, that's kind of how that happened. And so I'm
you got your first client that was 2014, that you got your first side client.
Yeah.
Interesting. I feel like, do you remember, this is going to be funny. Do you remember, it was probably in 2016, because it was right when I was in the midst of quitting my corporate job. We got into like a peer mastermind, but it didn't actually go anywhere. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Wasn't it one woman shop?
Oh, is that where we met? Okay.
Yes.
It's so funny.
It was one woman shop, and there was these weekly, or not weekly, but maybe monthly things. And I don't know if I bowed out of it because I was like too overwhelmed, or if it didn't go somewhere. But yeah, we were together back in the early days, because I remember going to email you to pitch you about something. I think maybe to come on my podcast, and I always searched my inbox, and I was like, we emailed back in 2016.
Yeah. It's a lesson for people who are listening, in my opinion, about the people who I end up networking with now and that we help promote each other.
Yep.
Are people I met in the beginning when we had nothing. We had no brand. We had like barely any presence, barely any email list. And now we're collaborating years later, 5 years later. I've been on your podcast. You've been on mine. We've promoted each other's things. Like, It's the value of relationships. I actually in the beginning underestimated the importance of the value of relationships. I kind of poo-pooed corporate networking for similar reasons, probably because I was very unhappy, but my family is very much rooted in like the stability of everything, stability of a corporate job, and, get your MBA and be a good little girl and sit in your cubicle. And I felt similar to you, really awful about the fact that I hated it, because like I had a good job and I had a great job for the area I'm in, and I hated it. I hated everything about it. And because of that, I hated networking. So I thought that that's how I'd feel in the online business. And then come to find out that when you love what you do, it's actually much easier to network. So that was like, you were doing freelance work 2 years before that, even.
Oh, yeah. And it was a hot mess. It was a hot mess. I did not know how much to charge. I did not know how to hold boundaries. I'm working a day job. I've got clients calling me. I had gotten a few more clients just through saying, oh, hey, funny story. Got this client. And they're like, oh, you do websites? I need some help. My dad needs help. And so tell people you're a web designer and you don't have to market. It's literally word of mouth. But I had no boundaries. I was so burnt out. I was working 24/7. I mean, truly. And I was working on my clients while I was at work. So I was like double stressed. It was nice because I was distracted from a job that I hated, but also it was just not a healthy place to be. And so I was like, WordPress is so easy. I do not want you calling me while I'm in a meeting so that I can change a font color for you. That shouldn't be changed anyway, but that's beside the point. Like, I'm going to show you how to do this yourself. And that's kind of where the idea of my free 5-day website challenge came from. The DIY web design training was that I just wanted to show people how to do it themselves. There were no good resources online. Everything I had learned was from like lurking in forums, trial and erroring, afraid to ask questions because dudes on the internet would just be like, you're stupid. You should not ask that. How dare you ask a question like that and say that you're building a website? I was just like,
oh,
okay.
So you're saying it was male dominated.
It was male dominated. So I was like, I need to create a space for the rest of us who actually do want to help see others succeed and not cut them down when they ask a question.
You're very accurate in the sense that there was not much out there. I remember when I wanted to put Redefining Mom online in 2013, there was nothing about WordPress. And WordPress, I mean, now I've been in there enough and I still actually don't do much in there. That's what I have a team for. But I've been in there enough that I can be like semi-dangerous with figuring some things out. It is not intuitive when you first get in there. And there was nothing online to make it like even semi. And I'm a pretty techie person. And there was just nothing in 2013. I ended up hiring someone. This is probably bad, like what she charged me. But I think it was like still like you said, you didn't know how to what to charge people.
Yes.
She charged me $400 and did, in hindsight, now that I've been doing this long enough, I'm like,
that's what I was charging.
Oh my gosh, it was a steal for what she provided for me. But again, you and her probably had no baseline for what you should be charging for it.
I had no idea. I charged based on like Here's how much I make at my day job. Let me make sure that I'm like covering taxes or whatever. And I'll like up that hourly rate a little bit. I had no concept of like how many hours I had spent learning everything that I learned over 8 years before because my day job was paying me. I was just doing my job. I had no concept of all the time that I put in to build that expertise. I had no concept that it wasn't easy for other people. I was like, this is easy. It's so easy. Like for me, because I'd been doing it for so long. And then also I had no concept of the fact that like I am like this hybrid technical person. So I can dive in and figure out the tech, but then I don't think about it the way techie people think about it. I think about it in like the way I'm not going to explain to you how the engine is built to teach you how to drive the car. I'm just going to show you how to drive the car. And every other tutorial out there was like, well, you need to learn the difference between PHP, a plugin, a widget. And I'm like, no, you really don't. Just point and click here and let's get this done so you can move on to the business that you want to run and not become a web developer.
This is very similar to how I am with ads. I think on ads on a different plane. You know what it is? We're able to intake a lot of information and regurgitate it in a user-friendly way. That's how I would describe, because I remember following some of your WordPress tutorials back in the day, like before I could really hire people to do anything, to change anything. And they were very straightforward. I think I learned MailChimp from you. This is so funny, the things I'm remembering. And it was the only job I took after corporate. It was like very short-lived when I was like, I couldn't come to terms with the fact that I was not going to have a W-2 paycheck anymore because it just seemed like really scary, of course. And that business used MailChimp. And I remember taking your course to learn MailChimp. Okay, so that had been 2016. So you did get started pretty early with digital products, but the majority of your income for a long time, because I still read all your income reports. They're great, by the way. We'll link to them because I think people love income reports. And you do a monthly still, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you've been doing a monthly for years. So I've read them for so long that I remember still a majority of your income was coming from being a service provider, having clients and not the digital product side. So I'd love to understand why. Why did you rely on clients for as long as you did versus moving more into pushing your digital products?
So interesting that you asked that because in the very beginning, I was like, I'm done with clients, cut it off. Build the free 5-day website challenge. Had no idea that it was a digital product. I was like, all I'm doing is affiliate marketing. I listen to Pat Flynn. I am doing affiliate marketing. The whole point of this training is so that I can make commissions on hosting, plugins, whatever. And I'm going to give it away for free. And I'm going to make commissions on all of this. And that's all I'm going to do. I'm not going to ever have a digital product. I'm never going to work with any other client ever again because that sucked and I'm burnt out and I can't do it. And so what happened was people would take the free 5-day website challenge and then they get to like day 2 and be like, I don't want to do this. Can I pay you to do this for me? And I'm like, no, you cannot. I don't want to do it for anybody. I kept saying no. And then I had a business coach say, hey, Shannon, you're leaving so much money on the table. You want to quit your day job, right? You could take on a few one-on-one clients and replace your paycheck and do that and build up the digital product side on the side of your one-on-one service-based business. And I was like, you're right. So I went on a mission to fix my broken processes and figure out the boundaries and learn how to stand up for myself and learn how to like tell the client what I was going to do for them instead of letting them tell me what they wanted me to do for them. So I flipped the whole power balance on it and like became a consultant instead of a pixel pusher, which is like what I was being before. I was an order taking pixel pusher. So now I'm like, oh no, I'm the expert consultant. And my prices are going up. They still were not anywhere where they needed to be, but it felt so scary for me. And this is how this is going to roll. And then I still struggled. I still struggled with keeping clients on track and everything, but I refined and refined and refined. And then when I quit my day job, I knew like, okay, I've got these big chunks of money coming in here, but then I've got like the affiliate revenue coming in over here. And those two things made up my business when I quit my day job.
And when did you quit your day job?
January 2nd, 2018.
So you held out for a while.
I did. Yeah.
I think I remember, I'm pretty sure it was you watching. Didn't you used to do Facebook Lives really early in the morning before you went into your corporate job?
I'm sure for a stint. I was not consistent with that, but yeah, I did.
You were a hustler. I have to say, you hustled.
I hated that job. I wanted out.
I mean, you held on way longer than I did, which is
I did that out of fear, truly.
okay.
And a commitment that I made to my husband, like, we won't see a dip in my income. I promise, like, if I make this move, that it will be seamless for us financially. I set a really big goal for myself. I kept getting raises at my job, right? So I turned my attitude around once I started kind of into this world of entrepreneurship and getting coaching. And I was like, oh, you know what? If I don't hate my life all day, I'll have actually energy for this job when I get home or so. As I started like growing as an entrepreneur, I started getting promotions and raises. So they kept raising the bar for me at work. And that's one of the reasons why I held out so long. I'm like, now I'm making six figures. Like, now I got to make more in my business.
Did they know about your side job?
The boss that I had when I quit knew about it. And I told her, because she called me into, I was like, this is it. This is the day I'm getting fired. I got called into the conference room, right? And I walk in and I sit down. And she was brand new. She had just taken over the CEO position like a month ago. And I'm like, yep, she's calling, like, I'm out. And she was like, hey, we want to give you a promotion. We want you to be in charge of like these departments and these teams. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if you know, I have this whole business on the side. And she was like, I'm also an entrepreneur. I own 3 other businesses. I feel like that's such a great way for you to do your personal development. You're doing all this great stuff and we want to benefit from it. And I was like, you are like the boss I've been searching for my whole life. I want to be you when I grow up. And that's also one of the reasons why I stayed. I had such a supportive, boss who's just like, go for it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, okay. That makes a lot more sense because I was in a corporate machine and there was they could have cared less if I had the entrepreneurial spirit or not. It was about the bottom line. I mean, they were publicly traded too, which, at the end of the day, you're not even really a human.
You're not a human. You're just,
You're just a point on their payroll that goes to the bottom line.
And you're a line on the spreadsheet. Yep.
Yeah. Which is actually a sad way to view people. I will say that the way I run my business now, and because I have employees, is everything that I couldn't stand about how I was treated in corporate, I like refuse to do that to my employees. It's like actually a really great lesson in how not to treat people.
Yep.
Okay. We talked about this before we started recording. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we were talking about was our backgrounds in having corporate type jobs, how that benefited us in entrepreneurship, like understanding how businesses work and the bottom line. Do you think you would be doing what you were doing if you hadn't been in a corporate position?
That is so interesting. I feel like one of the things that I brought with me was just like, when you get to a certain level in corporate, you are fully responsible for yourself and your results. And you're also responsible a lot of times for deciding what those results are going to be and then executing them. So, I mean, that just like slid right on over into my business. I was in charge of a $5 million budget, going to the board of directors and arguing for why this $5 million budget needs to be $5 million, selecting our software and making the case for why we need to pay $1 million to this company over the next 5 years to use their software. So I had this really big role, and I don't know if I would have kind of stayed in that like lower level admin, like, hey, Shannon, here's some work to do, get it done by whatever, that I would have really had the full scope of what it takes to move from like solopreneur service provider to CEO of my company. But also a lot of that stuff, like I didn't learn on the job. I was just now like taking those skills and applying. I had to get like business coaching to bridge that gap.
You sought that out. I
sought it out because I was like, I am taking all the courses. I am copying what all the successful people that I'm watching doing, and I am not getting results. So I am missing something here. And what I was missing was like, oh, here's how you actually take a product to market. You don't just make it because you think it's a good idea and then get frustrated when it doesn't sell. There's a process for that.
This is very interesting. The last job I had in corporate was in marketing. I owned a multi-million-dollar marketing budget, responsible for taking in the money and spending it. And I had lots of pressure because they actually set it up genius. Marketing in that company was like the profit center because it was distribution, tech distribution, and margin super low on the core side of the business. So they made it up in marketing funds. But the core side of the business wanted to spend the marketing funds. And probably one of the best things my last manager in corporate ever told me is she said, treat your budget like you would your checking account. So I had VPs and directors breathing down my neck all the time to spend my money. And I was like, I have a profit margin to hit and I have to report the return on all this spend back to our vendors. And I'm not going to be on the hook for looking bad. So I had to get good at saying no to people in boardrooms. Like that job got me into boardrooms I never expected to be in. I would like look around and be like, why am I sitting here? It was very weird, but it taught me how to basically run. It was like running a micro business inside of a really large corporation. And the thing you mentioned something that really stuck out about when you get to a point in your career, you are accountable for your goals and for hitting them. Like, and that's the same thing for me. Like our managers were there to guide us, but if we weren't going to perform, we weren't going to perform. And there's a lot of people I see come into the online world, this dream of like flexible schedules and stuff. And I've honestly never taken a flexible schedule to this year. So I've been doing this. I quit my corporate job in early 2016 and I took off a couple Fridays ago, impromptu. And it was the first time I've ever taken off a day impromptu. Like that wasn't scheduled on the calendar, that everyone was aware that I was taking it off. I've never taken like those quote unquote benefits of entrepreneurship because to me, I got where I am because I showed up and held myself accountable day after day. And this whole idea that you can just work in the fringe hours. And I'm not saying no one does that. Like there are exceptions to every rule. But it's unfortunate, I feel like, the advice that is put out there, this like dream that's put out there without the practicality of how to actually get there.
Yeah, I worked my butt off to get here. And I work a flexible schedule in that I can work from anywhere. Like that's the thing. And I know I crossed over into like workaholism or whatever you want to talk about, but I was like so passionate about what I was doing. And I didn't want to stop a lot of the time. But at the same time, it's like, no, I actually like have a 8 to 5, 9 to 5 schedule now that I'm self-employed because I want to be not working when my husband's not working. And I want to be doing like nobody else in my life has this kind of arrangement where they can just do what they want when they want. And so I model my business hours around when I can spend time with the people that
Same.
I love. But I show up for it every day. And like you saying that you just took a random Friday off that was unplanned. I'm like, but how? And I think that that's kind of where I'm like working towards, right? I'm working towards building the structure underneath of me so that I am doing only the things that I can do.
Well, actually, so let's talk about how this Friday was possible, because I don't know actually where you stand right now on supporting your business, but I have 2 employees. We have tons of contractors that do various things, but I have like basically a right-hand person, Haley. She's my operations manager. And we've hired her an assistant, an operations assistant. And honestly, and I've even had Haley on payroll for 2 years. And yet we're to a point now where when I said, I'm not working today, she could take care of anything that came. And that's why, I have control issues and stuff. And like that took 2 years of working with her to get to the point where we could get there. So what does it look like for you? Do you have help?
I do. I have all contractors right now, online business manager who's a contractor, tech VA who's a contractor, marketing VA, and then someone who's a community manager. And I think at the time of this recording, we're kind of looking for that like executive assistant, like right-hand person. I don't have any employees. I could. I just haven't like kind of figured, like I have people that I'm hiring that have their own businesses that have other clients. And so I'm like, not to the point where I'm like, oh, okay, I need, full time, but I'm working on the trust issues, right? That's my big piece of this is like, I have been doing it for so long, the way that I do it and have like my own ways of doing things. And I'm working on delegating in such a way that it's not like that you're disempowered to make decisions if you don't ask me how to do it. That's the piece that I'm working on right now is just being like, I'm going to let go and empower you to do what you do best. I'm going to empower you to I don't even want to call it a mistake, mess it up or make a different decision than I would. And then we'll talk about it after it's done and I'll reset my expectation.
That is super hard. I think we're very much alike. Can I tell you what I actually think was the biggest turning point for me?
Yes.
I made a mistake hire in 2020. I hired too high for what I was ready for. a big piece of advice that goes around about hiring is that you, as a leader, you come up with the solution and you hire for someone to execute on it. I did that wrong. I basically knew we had a pivot last year, but was too stuck in the daily grind of making sure that we were afloat with the revenue. And so she kind of got assigned to dream for my business. And it was backwards. And then there got a point where I was like, why does she always get to work on the stuff I want to work on? And it was on me. It was completely on me. It was just, I hired wrong. And I came out of it with a little bit of PTSD because I always said when I was in corporate, I never wanted to manage people. I was an individual contributor there. I never wanted to be in middle management. Basically, I used to say, oh, I'm never going to follow the HR rules. I'm going to tell people if they're dumb. So I can't manage people. And so I never did in corporate. After that experience, I didn't know why I was fighting myself in the fact that like Haley and I have a great relationship. It's kind of like the visionary integrator. I've talked about Traction a few times on the book Traction. And I want to be very close with my integrator, be able to bounce anything off of them. But I don't want to manage a big team. I do not. So when we hired her assistant, she onboarded, she did everything. The only thing I did was the legal side of things, working with the CPA and payroll and all of that. And it has changed my life because now we have double the work power going on and I am not managing it. When I went to Jamaica last week, it was the first time since 2017 I didn't open my computer for a week. Emails went out. Money was made. I wasn't involved in any of it. And if you had asked me that a year ago, I would have told you, you're crazy. I'm never going to get to that point. I'm always going to be stressed out in my business. I'm never going to get to take real time off. So for me, that was the turning point. If it gives you any hope that it's possible for control freaks like us.
It does. It does. And that's kind of the structure that I have with my OBM now is we meet, we come up with the projects, and then she is accountable for making sure that the marketing VA executes. And, and I put my brain into our processes and, we work through that. And so I've known her for many, many years. And I was at this point of burnout after I did my summit back in February. And I was talking to her and I was like, we're in a mastermind together. And I was like, I'm just going to shut down half my business. I'm literally going to go all in on the Web Designer Academy. I'm shutting down the podcast. I'm shutting down the website marketing lab. I'm shutting down the 5-day website challenge, which was the thing. I was like, and this is all I'm going to do. And she's like, you just need help, my love. And I would love to help you. And I'm like, what?
Yeah. Because we can't.
But I was like, it's perfect because she's made for this, for all of that. So I was like, okay, let's talk. And we figured it out. And it's somebody that I trust, that I have seen do this work. And that was massive for me because I am working on my trust issues and my control issues. I was just in a 3-day training working on my trust and control issues in business so that I can, I don't want to be a burnt out millionaire. I want to be I'm still going to work. Don't get me wrong, but I want to be joyful and peaceful and calm and trust that everything's going to happen the way that it needs to happen and develop people and grow people like my boss did for me and not be stressed all the time. So that's really what I'm working on. Cause I'm like, what is this all for? If I'm going to hate my life again, why am I going to recreate the same situation that I had before? Oh, wait, I'm the common denominator here.
Honestly, I never, when we lived paycheck to paycheck, I definitely thought money bought happiness when I was that person. And when I was constantly in debt and had tons of student loans, which I still have tons of student loans, I should really do something about that. But, I would have told you I thought money bought happiness. And then money wasn't so stressful anymore. And I was very unhappy. I was still very unhappy. And I got to that point, it was last September. I basically had my body started shouting at me. I started having back spasms and all this crazy stuff started happening. And I thought, oh, maybe it's the stress of COVID. But really it was just my body saying, you've pushed yourself too far. And I was so unhappy. And I remember my husband looking at me in December. I mean, this was just 5 months ago. And he's like, what's the point if you're this miserable? And I was like, you know what? What is the point if I'm this miserable? And I really would have rather shut down the business than to continue down a path that made me that unhappy. And so then I just blew up everything. And similar to when you're like, I'm just going to shut everything down. But for you getting help, you didn't have that help piece. I had the help piece and I still felt and so that's when I get to the conclusion that revenue goals, they're great to have and to work towards, but not at the sake of hating my life. I don't want to be an unhappy millionaire either. That doesn't interest me. I want to be happy. I have spent more time with my kids in the last 5 months than probably ever before because I just decided I was chasing the wrong thing. And it's very liberating.
Yeah.
So, okay, tell me now, you don't do client work.
No.
Okay. So you have digital products. Tell us what they are.
Yeah. So I have my free 5-day website challenge that's still going, still generates affiliate revenue. The revenue has just increased like crazy. And then you put out a digital product that I think you still sell. I don't know, the triple dip sales funnel.
Yep.
So I had this idea to create templates because one of the reasons people would not complete my 5-day website challenge is that they were like, I don't know how to design. I don't have the eye for design. I don't know what to say. So I collaborated with a graphic designer to create like the graphics, and I did the page layout. And then I had my website copy strategy guide. And so I put all that together. I'm like, here's everything I teach you in the 5-day website challenge done for you, plus some strategy baked in. Here's everything I would have done for you if you were my one-on-one client. And then packaged all that up into a digital product. We call it Site and a Snap. And then I used your strategy to offer that.
Awesome. You did tell us that
you use templates.
Yeah, you use the templates and that they worked. So that's good.
I am a web designer. I'm like, I do not want to design this. I am literally just going to buy this strategy and system and just follow it step by step because I don't want to try to reinvent the wheel and test and change. I'm like, this is proven. Why am I going to go?
Yeah. And you design websites, but sales funnels are different.
Totally.
They're not,
Absolutely.
It's not the same,
it's not.
And I am not a web designer by any means. Actually, we've really started up leveling our templates because Haley convinced me that we should hire actual designers to take because I'm great at the tactical and strategy, but I just don't have a design eye. She's like, we just need to take your brain and someone make it prettier. So we've really started up leveling those website templates are a great thing to sell. So that went well for you when you started selling those templates.
Oh yeah. We made, what did I say? $40,000 in 5 or 6 months. And I don't where I live. I'm in Columbus, Ohio. That's a normal income.
Same in Buffalo.
Yeah. And I'm just what is happening? Why did I not do this 5 years ago?
I had in 2019 or 18, I added a $7 order bump to one of my really high churning mom products and made $34,000 off the $7 click the box at checkout. And I remember thinking, I'm pretty sure that's what I made when I started in my corporate job. So that's incredible. All I did was add the checkbox to my checkout form. It's almost whoa, that's just crazy to quantify that out, how one thing can just change so much. Okay, so then you have that, but now you have this academy where you're helping people build websites for other people. So you're teaching that, right?
I am teaching web designers who already know how to build websites for other people to stop undercharging, over delivering so they can make sustainable revenue, and also teaching them how to scale with their knowledge, right? How to package up their intellectual property, whether that be a course or a template or something that's very solution specific for their ideal client.
And
so it's a whole process.
Is your core offer?
This is where I'm yes, sure. For web designers, I have these two sides of my business that are one's for the DIYer and then the other's for the web designer, right?
Okay, yeah. I'm following now. Yeah. So the DIYers, the challenge, you get the templates and the strategy, and then this is for people who are service providers.
Yes. Yep. Teaching them all of the stuff that I messed up on in the early days, fixed it, packaged it up, helping them.
Which side do you like more?
Oh my gosh. I love to see the transformation the web designers go through. They're both near and dear. I love to see a DIYer take my training and go on to build $1 million business because that has happened. I mean, it's crazy. And then I love to see the web designers transform from, like I said, the pixel pushing order taker to the collaborative expert consultant and 10x, 20x their prices. That's super rewarding to me as well. So they both are. I have conflicts with. It's you have 2 kids and one's your favorite sometimes and the other's not. That's how I feel.
I actually experience that. It's actually very weird how that happens. One day, one kid's just so adorable and the other one's on my nerves. And then the next day it's totally opposite. But that can also feel stressful sometimes to feel because we pretty much sidelined Redefining Mom this year to focus on the digital product side because I felt I couldn't my attention was too divided. So that can also I'm sure you feel some stress around that sometimes.
Sometimes I feel like after, what is this, 2021, after 6 years after launching the free 5-day website challenge and like 1 year of that, like site in a snap funnel, that kind of runs itself. Like it's self-driving traffic from all of the relationships and seeds that I've planted before. I have a team that answers the questions. Like that's very like, I don't really do a whole lot with that. Most of my time is with the Web Designer Academy right now. And then I have a third child, which teaches the DIYers how to like actually get traffic to their website, and that type of thing.
Okay. Is that new?
No, that's been around for a while. It's the Website Marketing Lab. That's the one that teaches them how to do it without ads, like we were talking about.
Yeah.
earlier.
Okay. So that's okay. So I have two things. You have built your business. You mentioned this before we start recording. People know that I did have organic traffic, but I've built substantially with ads. You have not built with ads. You have built this business completely organic. So now you're helping people in your lab. What are the popular methods? How do you teach people, like just like a high level, how to organically grow without ads?
Literally relationship building.
Networking, which is how we started this, right? When we talked about the power of it.
Yeah, I am like, create a valuable, I call it a share-worthy freebie. Use it to leverage building relationships with people who serve the audience that you serve in a different way. So you're not competing. Go talk to people, make friends, build relationships, serve their audience. And there are so many different ways to do that. This is a situation, this podcast, and do the work to find your people. And, and it all starts with like actually talking to people.
So it's essentially what people would coin in this world as JVs, joint ventures. Like you find adjacent audiences, people who would be interested in what you're providing. But like you said, the person you're partnering with doesn't do the exact same thing, but their audience would be interested in it. And you've just grown, which funny enough, I talked about this at some point. That actually, before I really doubled down on ads, because we do run a lot of ads now, but before I really doubled down, when my Pinterest advertising course took off, it was right after my second daughter was born. And it was a series of JVs of other Pinterest influencers who didn't want to talk about ads because ads was like that foreign thing no one wanted to touch. It was new on the platform. And they're like, perfect. People ask me about it, but I don't want to talk to my audience about it. And there were like 3 or 4 pretty heavily influenced Pinterest people out there who had brought me in front of their audience. And I just did like mini like Q&As and it exploded everything for me, which is essentially what you're saying to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love that.
And it was even more like less formal than a JV. In the early days, it was like, oh, collaborate, or it was always me going first, like with no expectation of them ever doing anything for me in return. Like, how can I support you? How can I serve you? And then the natural next step is, oh, hey, I'm doing this. And then you've already built trust with that person because you showed up, you followed through, you served their audience, and now you've established some trust. And it's just like life, right? And It's way more fun doing business with friends than going it alone.
So since you haven't grown with ads, but I've been on your email list for at least 5 years, how big is your email list? All organic?
All organic, about 8,000.
Wow.
I mean, I'm sure I could have, and I called 5,000 people off of it during the great GDPR scare of 2018 or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I know it could be way bigger had I had the patience and the understanding of how I needed to like test ads. And I just didn't. I was like, oh, I'm supposed to put $1 in, get $3 out. And that didn't happen after spending $20. So this doesn't work. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to go over here and build my list this way. I had no concept of like what it really takes to go through a process of validating your ads. And so I just opted out and went with what was easy for me and not what was uncomfortable, which was to blow, in my mind, blow or waste money on ads. I did not have the concept that like, oh, you said earlier before we started, I'm paying for data right now.
Yeah, I'm going to have a whole podcast episode coming up on this. I had to sort of I called it a state of the union to my students because it just got to the point where I felt like there was too much unrealistic expectations of what ads can and cannot do for a business, especially when you're new and your pixels aren't seasoned. Meaning like a pixel is a code you put on your website. It tracks. It's how Facebook and Pinterest and all that know what's going on, who's taking action. It's basically, if without that, you can't run ads. And people, they'll put a pixel on their site no data. They haven't given any data to Facebook or Pinterest yet. And they expect magic when they put a couple, I had someone put $30 in and was upset that they got nothing in return. I'm like, $30 is nothing. So I had to draw a hard line and say, listen, if you're not willing to upfront spend at least $500, don't even bother running ads. And that is very low. Like some teachers would tell you thousands, but it was frustrating to see people think that it was just, like you put up an ad and magic happens. It's just not the way. But that goes to show we all have different strengths when we're building businesses. And that didn't resonate with you. You didn't want to double down on it because it felt stressful to you. So you went with something that felt more naturally. And, I just culled my list down to 52,000. I've probably had hundreds of thousands filter throughout the years. So it's vastly different, right? Someone would be like, oh, she only has 8, but you have 52,000. But who cares? Because it's about how we serve our audiences.
Yeah. I mean, like I collaborate with people who have 500 people. I'm like, that's 500 people I don't know. And this person's introducing me to them. And their introduction builds trust with them. And I've gotten my best, like if I'm going to go for 500 and then have someone join my academy at $5,000, $10,000 from those, why would I not do that? And that person is going to have 5,000 in 2 years and then 10,000. Like it's just going to grow. So it's not like a one and done, like judge people by their audience size at the snapshot in time. It's a long-term, multiple year thing. And just one more thing I wanted to say, like you went all in on ads. I went all in on relationship building. We were consistent. We stayed the course. We did not quit. Whatever you choose will work if you stop jumping around from thing to thing to thing the moment that you don't get the result that you expected.
I just want to say, I think this is like my 3rd or 4th episode that consistency has been brought up. And I actually follow a coach. I watch her stories and she actually poo-poos consistency. She says it's one of those fake things that you hear of how to run a successful business. And, I actually appreciate people that have alternative viewpoints. I think I think actually the biggest thing we do wrong in the world is put ourselves in echo chambers. Like when you get into politics on Facebook and you get mad at the other side, you put yourself in an echo chamber. You only want to hear but how do you grow and learn? Like I've always felt so many people that don't agree with me politically say, wow, I've had the best conversations with you. And I'm like, that's because if I don't understand where you're coming from, like how are we ever going to reach a middle ground? Even if I vehemently disagree with you, let's have a conversation about it. And so it's interesting to watch her say consistency is not important. It's kind of a lie. But yet everyone I talk to that's had success online, we all go back to the showing up day in and day out, sticking with it and consistency. So I don't know, I have to explore what she's saying a little bit more because it's fascinating to me because I don't understand that. But I don't know, I agree with you on the consistency thing.
Yeah, I'd be interested, what is the thing? Because maybe the word we're using is not, maybe she has a different definition. I'm totally fascinated by other people's viewpoints because it kind of cracks your brain open to be like, oh, now I know why I am going to keep this belief, or I'm open to exploring what you're saying.
That's how I feel. That's why I can't articulate it yet because it just hit my stories a few times.
Yeah.
And it's funny too, because you know what I find, and I feel like a great life lesson, when something triggers me. So when she said that, it kind of triggered me. It almost seemed kind of condescending. And I have learned that means I should pay attention when I am triggered. And that is why I do have great political conversations with people I don't agree with. Actually, more people in my life don't agree with me politically than do, which is kind of funny, but it's because I just have this thirst for understanding how we can live in the same world and lots of times have very similar experiences, but see things so differently. It's I ask the question, what am I missing? And it's okay, if consistency isn't important, then what am I missing? What could be better? Could my life be better? Could my business be better? Let's figure this out. So I don't know. Yeah. We'll have to circle back to that once I actually dive into it some more. And I don't want to say who it is yet, because who knows if it could be very misguided. But yeah, I don't know. It's just fascinating to hear so many of my guests though say the same thing, that consistency has been important in their business journey. Okay, we went really long. I'm glad everyone's still listening. We did this when I was on your show too. We could talk forever. But building a website is important for anyone who has an online business. So that means there's got to be people listening who are interested in either, probably both sides of your house, building their own website or providing website services. So how do they find you?
ShannonMattern.com. That's where all the things are. So all the links to everything, you can go there.
Okay, great. We will link to that and everything else we talked about in the show notes. So thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Me too.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Empowered Business Podcast. Let's stay in touch. I just opened a brand new Facebook group for digital product creators. Whether you are new to digital products or an existing digital product creator, our new Facebook group, Digital Product Insiders, is perfect for you. Head on over to monicafroze.com/group to join for free. See you here again next week.